What should people say about Jordan Peterson?
That he wanted the best for people. And we put the world together, and we start with ourselves. It's like, start with yourself. You got work to do. Get at it. Then maybe you'll develop enough wisdom so that you'll be good for someone other than you. What's the story of your life? Is it a comedy or a tragedy? Comedy is something with a happy ending, fundamentally, and a tragedy as well. It starts bad and gets worse. You know, and is it a tragedy that someone else is imposing on you, or some bit of you that you don't understand? What's the story of your life? Part of that is, well, what do you want? What are you aiming at? That's the reverse of sin, right? You're aiming at something. Well, the Future Authoring Program helps you determine what it is that would be good for you to aim at.
What do you hope for?
What do you hope for? So the exercise basically assumes that you treat yourself as if you're someone that you're taking care of. So that's the presupposition. You're valuable, despite your flaws. It would be okay for you, and maybe all right for the universe as a whole, if your life wasn't any more wretched than it has to be. So we could set it up for that. Okay, so now, if you were looking 3 to 5 years down into the future, and you could have what you needed within the bounds of reason, what would it be? What do you want? What do you want from your family? What do you want from your friends? How are you going to educate yourself? What are you going to do for your career? How are you going to take care of your mental and physical health? How are you going to resist temptation? What are you going to do with your time outside of work that's productive and meaningful? You get to have it. It's like knock and the door will open. Okay, you've got to knock first. Well, and then you got to pick the door. And like, I really like this because it is, you cannot catch something you're not pursuing. So now, if you're pursuing it, that doesn't mean you'll catch it. But generally, you'll catch something interesting along the way. You know, that's the thing that's so cool about this. Let's say you set out a vision, and you start pursuing it. You don't get what you were after. But you learn a lot as you move towards that destination. And as you learn, your vision is going to change, and you may end up with something that's better than what you were aiming at to begin with. But that won't happen unless you initiate the journey. Okay, so you put together a vision. That's your call to adventure. Get out there in the world and contend with it. Well, you might not get what you want, but you might find what you need. But it won't happen without the pursuit. And that's part of faith, right? Faith is, I'm going out in the world to seek my fortune. And if I do that properly, then the fates will cooperate with me. Meaning. If you pursue what's meaningful, then sometimes you'll encounter bliss. Perhaps as often as it's possible to, which I would say isn't that often. Those are sort of peak experiences. Meaning. And I do believe that meaning is a fundamental instinct. In fact, I think it's the most fundamental instinct. It's what you've got. Meaning is real. You know, human beings discovered time. That's one of the things that makes us very peculiar creatures. To be aware of our own mortality is a consequence of the discovery of time, right? We can see how we extend out into the future. And so that makes us very strange creatures as selfish creatures. Because you actually can't be narrowly selfish and survive. And here's the reason. You have to take care of yourself now. So let's say, well, then you can pursue impulsive pleasure, perhaps at the expense of other people. And why not? Well, here's one reason why not. There isn't just you now. There's you tomorrow. There's you next week. There's you next month and next year and 10 years from now. And so if you conduct yourself in a manner in the present that interferes with your future selves, then that's a downhill trip for you. And so taking care of yourself in the future and taking care of other people actually turns out to be exactly the same thing, because you're actually a community of people that's distributed across time. And so if you act in your own best interest, then you're going to sacrifice some of the present for the future. And that was one of the great discoveries of mankind, right? Which is something that I also concentrate on in 12 Rules, because I'm really interested in the issue of sacrifice. Why would you give up something now? Why would you ever give up something now voluntarily? And the answer is sometimes if you give up something now, and it's often something you love, something you're very in love with even, perhaps not for the best reasons, then you can make a bargain with the future. And that bargain with the future isn't any different than the bargain you make with other people. So that narrow selfishness is blindness to time and context. And there's nothing about it that's good. And I do think the musical example is a really good one. Like in a musical piece, every note has to fit with every other note across the entire span of the piece. Well, that's what your life needs to be like, is like how you act with me right now has to be in harmony with what you want for yourself tomorrow. And that's going to be tangled in as well. It's not only that you repeat across time and have to take that into account, it's that you repeat across time in the context of your social life. And so all of that has to be brought into the equation. And the sacrificial motif is a huge part of that. And then that also is something that runs contrary in some sense to empathy, because sometimes you have to beat yourself on the back of the head with a stick to get yourself to move forward properly, even though you know, I should be doing this, I should be doing this. Well, I don't want to, it's hard. It's like, no sympathy for that. You have to do it, because otherwise things are going to get worse. It's unbelievable how little genuine encouragement many people need, and how they had none. No one ever said to them and meant it. It's not okay for you to be a weak loser. It's not okay. And the reason it's not okay is because you could be way more than that. And it's a crime, an ethical crime, for you to allow all that necessary potential to go to waste. It hurts you, it hurts your family, it hurts the world. Really, really, it does.